Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sideline Shenanigans podcast. Today with Jacob Magadan.
Dalton Phillips.
And another fun week of football, man. Got to recap some games. Of course, Dalton, he had to be a little bit upset over the weekend, but it's not a bad loss coming from a great football team. And of course, there was a lot of big upsets this week. Got teams just pretty much eliminated. They've ended their seasons. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the college football playoff rankings because it's that time of year where these really matter. Really, the AP poll throughout the year doesn't mean a whole lot. It just kind of shows you where teams are kind of tabbed amongst the country's best, analysts and media guys. But this is what matters. I mean, you're looking at the actual committee that decides the playoffs, and just jumping right into this. As you can see, we've got our top team in the country. We've had them since I don't know week 5, week 4, somewhere in that area. When they did beat Ohio State, they've set their sense. It's Oregon at 1, Ohio State at 2. I agree with both of these things. I think those are the two best teams in the country, or have showed that they are the two best teams. If you're going to say Oregon is the best team and Ohio State only lost to them by 1 point, I think you have to say they're the second best. They do have a big win over Penn State, of course. And to dive farther into this, you have Texas at 3. Texas is one of those teams that's interesting because on paper you say, where is their massive win? They haven't had a massive victory yet. Now they do have Texas A&M in the future. That is the game that they can get that huge win on the road at Kyle Field. That will be important. If they can pull that off, then you can look at their resume and say it's a lot stronger. Of course, they'll represent the SEC in the conference championship, which will again help them build resume. And even if they were to make it there and lose, it would not matter. Texas will make the playoffs, so they got to finish this season strong and hopefully for them get a big win over Texas A&M later on. You look at 4-5, two more teams in the Big Ten: Penn State, Indiana. Indiana being undefeated, very very impressive football team, have a very important game coming up. The game for them, one of the biggest games that they will play and have played in a very long time for Indiana football. And then Penn State, of course, they've been really steady. The Ohio State game, you look at that one and you say, what could they have done if Aller was healthy? He was not healthy in that game. It was pretty clear. And just mistakes and opportunities missed there. But I still think when it comes to football teams, they're very sound. They have a very good defense, really solid offense, and I don't see them dropping a game the rest of the year. So I agree with the 4 ranking for them. You move past that, you go look at 6 Notre Dame. Of course, the NIU loss looks like one of the worst losses any of these teams have. But then you look at how they've played against a lot of these other football teams, including a Texas A&M team sitting at 15. They've beat up on teams since then. They've really just been beating the living daylights out of teams, and that is why they're sitting at 6. But they do have a big challenge coming up. I mean, again, this Army team sitting at 19 is not going to be easy. They're going to play that weird style of football that they don't see very often. Now they did dog walk Navy earlier in the year, but Navy really shot themselves in the foot in that game. So we'll see if Army can handle themselves a little bit better. That's a big one for them. Then you look at 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. To me, this is a very tight race amongst these 5 teams. I think personally, I would not have Bama at 7. I would have Miami ahead of them. And then I would see the arguments for Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee, even all 3 over them. But I think that they have played much, much better football over the last 2, 3 weeks. So you look at those 2 teams, or especially here, I think those would flip. After that, it's a really good argument for the rest of the SEC. Again, very tight race there. I mean, in this scenario, sad to say for you, but Tennessee is the team that's the odd one out. Right now, they're sitting right on the outside looking in.
Yep, the
They
first one out. That sucks. That sucks for us. But I mean, we're hope. I think that we could fit in between that whole section right there. Anybody could be flipped because there's a bunch of teams that have beat each other. So like, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's it's bad to look at it right now and then be behind those schools only because if those teams don't lose, how can you warrant moving Tennessee ahead of them?
yep.
That'll be the hard thing. That if Tennessee just doesn't have really a major game left on their schedule that they can pick up a huge win, Vanderbilt's kind of fell off a little bit, and so it's going to hurt Tennessee if one of these teams doesn't lose a game. They really need Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia. They need one of these teams to drop a game to get back up in the playoffs. Or of course, Indiana lose 2 straight to end the year, they would drop out. But it's going to be tough. Tennessee is definitely sitting in a weird spot at the moment. At 12, we have Boise State. As of right now, they would get a first round bye. They would be a conference champion that is in the top 4. They would be ahead of the Big 12 champion, which at this point looks like BYU, sitting at 14. Of course, you have Colorado at 16. Those 2 teams look to be vying for that spot in that championship game. You look at 13, you have SMU. Again, Miami, SMU right now are going to play in the conference championship game as long as they don't lose another game. That is the conference matchup for the ACC. Again, we just mentioned BYU. They have to finish the season strong. They have to win out so they can get a conference championship, opportunity, which would get them in the playoffs. After that, you look at Texas A&M. This team is still set up very well to make the playoffs. A&M is in as good of a spot as any of the schools in the SEC. They are one loss in the conference. They play Texas to end the season. If they win that Texas game, they will be in the conference championship game. They will be sitting inside this top 10, top 8 range. And at that point, even if they were to lose the conference championship game, can you take a two-loss Texas A&M team out of the playoffs? I don't think so, especially if one of your two losses is a conference championship game. So they're still sitting there with their own destiny under control. I honestly, as an A&M fan, would feel a lot better than Tennessee because Tennessee just can't really control their own destiny. They have to hope for losses and outside chances for them to get in. Again, this was definitely something that just kind of sucked to see for them if you were a Tennessee fan like you, especially because that Georgia game is obviously the deciding factor of them making the playoffs right now because they're right behind Georgia. They win that one, they're ahead of them, and Georgia's done for the year. After that, we look at Colorado. Mention them, of course, still fighting for that Big 12 championship spot. If they win, they're in. So that'll be an interesting dynamic. We'll see what they can do there. 17, we have Clemson. Again, they're really hoping for another Miami loss, or they're hoping for an SMU loss because they need to find a way to get into that conference championship game to have any chance in the playoffs. South Carolina, this team is practically eliminated, but they aren't. There is still a chance that they can get in. It would just be a lot has to happen for them. A lot of these teams have to drop games, and of course they have to beat Clemson at the end of the year when they play them. It will be very tough. The route for them is pretty much impossible, but it's still there. That's why they're sitting at 18. After that, we look at two of the non-power schools in Army and Tulane. Army obviously still sitting at undefeated. They have the matchup that will decide their fate. They are playing number 6 Notre Dame. If they win that football game, don't be surprised to watch this Army team jump up inside this top 14, top 12, and then they're looking at a playoff spot. It's going to be really fun to see what they can do against Notre Dame and see if they're legit, which I think they are. 20, you look at Tulane. This Tulane team, take away those two losses, man. It really sucks that they got those early in the year because this Tulane team is on fire right now. They have one of the best running backs in the country. We watched them absolutely smother Navy's offense last week, shut them out 35-0. They're scary good. Tulane is actually really, really solid. Darian Mensah is awesome at quarterback. And we'll see if they have any chance at all. Of course, their chance has to be Boise dropping a game and Army dropping a game, and then they could get that playoff spot. After that, you look at a couple other Big 12 teams in here, Arizona State, Iowa State, both just kind of sitting around, hanging around. There is chances for these two teams to play in a Big 12 championship game, but they need a BYU loss. They need a Colorado loss. So the odds are not in their favor. After that, we look at a Missouri team that, to me, this was the first one I had a gripe with. I just don't think they should be ranked. I don't agree with Missouri sitting at 23. I don't think they should be in the top 25. I don't see a big win on their schedule at all. They haven't beat anybody good. They're 7-3, and their losses have come against decent or good football teams. But I don't see the reason for them being ranked. Then at 24, you have UNLV, another non-power school that they still have an outside chance as well. If they make that conference championship game and beat Boise State, then they're looking at the playoff spot. So they still have a chance. You're really looking at UNLV, Tulane, Army, Boise State. That's about it. That is the teams that will end up deciding who's going to make the playoffs. And then, of course, wrapping it all up at 25 is Illinois. Again, their losses are not bad losses. 7-3 football team, you can make arguments for them to not be in there as well, but they make more sense to me than a Missouri team that just doesn't have a big win. Dalton, you have anything you want to add to this rankings?
Yeah, I believe that there's a few teams in there like Missouri. I don't think Missouri has it should be even close to there. They've just struggled, especially with Drew Pine at quarterback. That guy should not be able to command a 23rd ranked team. That's just not a team that should be there, in my opinion. And obviously, I'm sad about our Georgia loss last week. 11, that fits us pretty good. I would like to be a little bit higher. I would love to be a little bit higher, actually. There's a good chance we can get in there, but it's just the fact of that Georgia loss is going to kill us, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you'd like to be higher, of course, but that loss is going to be it's very detrimental to their playoff chances because when you saw these rankings come out, you were wondering where would they be? Where would they have these four teams ranked? I mean, these are the four teams fighting for that last couple spots. It'd be Bama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee. Of course, as a Tennessee fan, you were hoping to see yourself be ahead of at least one of them because that's kind of what you have to have. I mean, they don't.
Yep.
Ole Miss doesn't really have a massive football game left on the schedule. Georgia's pretty much done their business as long as they don't lose to a Georgia Tech team at the end of the year, and of course Bama, they have nothing left. They have an Oklahoma team that is obviously in shambles right now, and then Auburn in their rivalry game. The schedules don't favor anybody in this situation when it comes to is there a tough opponent left? They don't really, none of them have a tough opponent left. It'll just be they have to lose. One of those teams has to lose, or you have to see a team like Notre Dame lose to Army, and drop out of the playoffs, or even Indiana drop 2 games. The odds are not in their favor for sure, but they need other teams to lose, and that's what sucks because you just can't control your own destiny in this situation. To open up our games here, we're looking at, of course, we got a pretty close one here that shouldn't have been that close. Washington State playing a New Mexico team that just isn't very good. A 4-win team coming into this one. This ruins Washington State's playoff hopes. Again, they couldn't drop a game for the rest of the year if they wanted any chance at all. Again, I don't think their chance was great. Now it's zero. There's zero chance at all. You look at the stats here in this game, and really Washington State's quarterback John Mateer played one of the best games he's played this year. Goes for 375, 4 touchdowns, runs the ball really well. Their lead rusher in this game, 9 for 65 and a touchdown, and then he gets contributions from Kyle Williams and Cooper Mathers in this game. But again, the big story here is New Mexico on their side has Devon Dampier. I mean, 11 for 25, 174 and a touchdown, and then rushes 28 carries for 193 yards and 3 touchdowns. This is unbelievable. I mean, this is just really, really, truly unbelievable play from a quarterback. He is the best rushing quarterback in the country. When you look at the stats, you look at how many yards per carry he's averaging, you look at his touchdowns with 16 of them on the year, 1,000-yard rusher as a quarterback, just a phenomenal player. He is an athlete. He is their offense. Without him, what would this team be? Of course, Eli Sanders also plays really well in this game. You can't disrespect that. 13 for 108 and a touchdown. But the difference is New Mexico runs for 360 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. Don't know if there's anything you want to add.
That 360 yards is what wins you a ball game, especially when your quarterback goes for almost 200. That is insane from
Yeah.
quarterback. The numbers there are ridiculous. And I know we've talked about rushing quarterbacks all year. We've not talked about this guy.
No.
He is leading the country in rushing yards, and
Yeah.
that's something to be said
Yeah.
for quarterbacks. That's nuts.
Yeah, best rushing quarterback overall in statistics. Again, look at his averages, look at his total yards. The guy's a beast. Next game here, Louisville on the road against Stanford, and Stanford gets a big win, but that is because of what happens at the end of this game. It is completely uncalled for. It is a way that a ranked football team should never lose, and it's a way that really, if you're a fan, you're gonna kind of like that Florida game a few years ago when Marco Wilson decided to throw the shoe down the field. You're not gonna like this player because he really threw away a season where you still had a chance to compete in the conference. I mean, you were sitting at 4-2. This would have put you at 5-2. Um, he gets an unsportsmanlike penalty on a tackle out of bounds. 1 second left on the clock. The game is practically going to go to overtime. I mean, they have to throw a Hail Mary. Who knows if they catch it? He picks him up on the sideline and then just pushes him for absolutely no reason, right in front of a referee. Ref throws a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty. Just really uncalled for, completely uncalled for. That's, again, a guy that will be getting chewed out by coaches this week, especially in film sessions and in the locker room. Um, on top of that, they pile that up with a 57-yard attempt, moving to a 52-yard attempt to try to win the game because they jump off sides. Clear as day. I mean, completely off sides. And so Stanford then moves up 5 yards. That is 20 yards of penalty with the clock sitting on 1 second. The clock did not move. 1 second left in the game. And they get 20 yards of penalties, put them in field goal range. Their kicker nails a 52-yarder that me and Dalton watched and was going to be probably about a yard or two short without the extra 5 yards. And of course, you take away the 15-yarder, and again, they're throwing a Hail Mary and going to overtime where Louisville is the better football team. This is just uncalled for from Louisville. Again, you look at stats. Duke Watson actually plays in this game. Isaac Brown, again, injuries have been an issue for a lot of running backs this year. We've seen that happen a lot. And again, another guy that just can't finish a game comes in and gets a few carries, but he didn't go. And Duke Watson really filled in really well, averaging 10.6 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns on the ground. Stanford, different story. No run game at all. Quarterback was sacked a lot, but they did have a better passing game. Daniels goes for 298, 3 touchdowns and an interception. Shuck on the other side, 270 and a touchdown interception. But again, this story is obviously just that end of that game. I mean, that's what loses you a game, and you just cannot have that. Dalton, if there's anything you want to add.
That's those 20 yards are just stupid ball play there. Like you cannot do that as a ranked football team or a football team in general. All of that's unacceptable, especially that after you get the 15-yard penalty, jumping off sides to give, which what made the field goal in my
Yeah.
opinion. Because I mean, without the extra 5 yards, he probably doesn't make that kick. It'd be very close. It'd be close to hitting the crossbar, but I don't think he makes the kick with that extra 5 yards, and that's how you lose ball games. And that's what they've done all year. They've lost close ball games all
Yeah,
year.
they have lost a ton of close games this year. Again, this Louisville team is looking at a completely different season if they just don't lose close games, and they have some nice wins that they just They just couldn't back up with simple games that they threw away. Opening up with our games here, of course, these are some pretty fun games we had this week. Again, sorry for what happened to you. Of course, that game was no fun. We'll talk about that later on. We did have some big upsets that we just covered, and some of these games were upsets too, games that we kind of didn't expect. But starting out with this one, me and Dalton both picked Navy here. That doesn't happen. We hate to see our armed forces go down, but Tulane was very dominant in this football game. A lot of that stems from the Blake Horvath injury. He's not healthy in this game. And Braxton Woodson just doesn't play great football. 3 for 10, no touchdowns and interception. And they just don't get the run game going either in this one. It's kind of the thing that they lean on and rely on a lot, especially when Horvath isn't playing, and it doesn't go well. Texas doesn't have a great game. You see guys like Henenreich not get going. And then on the other side for Tulane, Darian Mensah goes 10 for 14, 138, 2 touchdowns. He plays well, no mistakes at all. And Mekhi Hughes, one of the best running backs in the country, has 2 touchdowns in this game as well. It's just a true story of Tulane's defense was phenomenal. They had to punt a lot. Navy didn't have anything going for them, and they can't play their kind of game when they don't have their starting quarterback in Horvath. Dalton, if you have anything to add.
Terrible running game from Navy here. They just couldn't get things going, and that's what they do. That's their identity. All these armed forces teams, they all run the ball, and they just couldn't get it going, and that's why Tulane won the ball game.
Yeah, they couldn't
And
lean on that. That's kind
yeah,
of their thing. And again, you would like to see that Horvath be healthy because it's fun to watch him play, and it's just fun to see what they can do when he's healthy. And he goes 5 for 25 in his 5 carries. But again, he's not there. They can't pass the same without him. And it's practically over for the American Championship. They were, of course, hoping to still get there. It's not possible at this point. Next game here, Clemson on the road against Pittsburgh. Again, we've talked about this Pittsburgh team just not being able to finish games. And again, they don't finish a game. They don't win down the stretch. And it's because they let Cade Klubnik go for a 50-yard run on literally the last play of offense for Clemson. They finish him off. And you see Klubnik plays a great football game. 27 for 41 in the air, 288, 2 touchdowns. He goes 10 carries for 41 yards. But you look at that and you say his long was 50. He has less than 50 rushing yards. That's because Pittsburgh's defense was all over him. They were all over Phil Maffa as well. The worst game he's had all year. 17 yards on 17 carries. Only averaging 1 yard per carry. No team has shut down Maffa like they did in this game. On the other side, you look at Pittsburgh. They're without Holstein. He doesn't play in this game. Nate Yarnell, they trusted him. 54 attempts in this game, 34 completions, 350 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. But again, he plays good football in this game other than that one mistake. And they get their run game going a little bit. I mean, Reed goes 14 for 68. Carter has 4 carries, has 31 yards. But you see Yarnell sitting there with 10 carries for negative 20 yards. A lot of that is the defense. On both sides, the defense was unbelievable. 8 sacks from Clemson, 5 sacks from Pittsburgh, 16 TFLs from Clemson, and 14 from Pittsburgh. Defense is the true story here. Again, 13 combined sacks and 30 combined TFLs. These kinds of stats you don't see. You just don't see them. This does not happen often in football. Both defenses played really dominant football games. Receiving, Antonio Williams goes 13 for 149, 2 touchdowns, wasn't healthy against Virginia Tech last week. He shows out in this one. I mean, that's a ridiculous stat line for him. And Desmond Reed, a guy we've talked about all year, being the lead guy in this passing attack for Pittsburgh, one of the better receiving backs in the country. He goes 10 for 108. Again, a lot of stats to look at here and a very close game because of it. But that Clemson defense and that one big run play from Cade Klubnik gets it done. Dalton, you have anything you want to add?
this was a defensive showcase here. Pitt's defense, I've talked about it the last few weeks. They have a really, really good defense.
Mm-hmm.
And they like that one game against Syracuse, they had that so many interceptions. Like they just make plays on the defense side of the ball. But Clemson did even better.
Yeah.
It's impressive, and I'm impressed by Pittsburgh being able to stop Phil Maffa like completely,
Yeah.
averaging 1 yard a carry. It is hard to tackle that man. He's a big dude.
Yeah, you see that single stat alone would have made you think Pittsburgh won this game.
Yeah.
17 for 17 is unbelievable. Again, we couldn't stop him. Nobody else has stopped him this year. And it was just that Cade Klubnik run. The defense folded one time. They made that one lapse, and that was it. That was the ball game. Clemson gets it done and still has a chance in the playoff and still has a chance at the conference championship, of course. Next game here, Texas on the road against Arkansas. And we really saw that Texas defense play a big role in this game. They dominated Arkansas. They didn't really let Arkansas's run game go on. They picked off Green. They were just very consistent in this game. Each and every drive, it looked like Arkansas just couldn't move the ball up and down the field. And Texas's offense, you get consistency again from Quinn Ewers, a guy that has of course NFL aspirations, but again, this season's been a tough one for him, dealing with the injuries, and even when he come back from those, he wasn't the same kind of guy he was even a year ago. And this is a good game from him, 176, 2 touchdowns, and you see him get his help from his running backs, Jadon Blue, Quintravion Wisner, both very good football games. 14 for 83 for Blue. Wisner has 17 for 59. You look on the other side, Arkansas again just didn't get it going on the ground. DeQuinton Jackson goes 11 for 56, and we see Taylor Green with 16 carries for -4 yards. Nobody's done that to Taylor Green this year. He's a freak athletic quarterback, and he just didn't make any big time plays in this game, and that's why Texas got it done. Again, you look at the receiving game. Andrew Armstrong has been the guy for Taylor Green all year. He does have a pretty good game, 6 for 74. And then Texas, they can go to a multitude of different guys. Again, defense, the story: 6 sacks, 9 TFLs compared to 2 and 9 on the other side from Arkansas. That's what gets it done. They just got to Taylor Green. They didn't let him make plays. Dalton, if you want to add.
Taylor Green is an athlete. He actually trained with Nico in California for a while. They're both kind of got the same build. Taylor Green's just a lot more athletic. He makes crazy plays, and they kept him to a halt here. Uh, and Texas showed what their defense is worth because this Arkansas rushing attack is no joke. It's one of the better in the SEC, if not the country.
Yeah,
And they stopped it completely, pretty much.
yeah. I mean, again, it wasn't hard, and really
Yeah.
building a little bit of a lead, even though it was only 10-0, it just changed how Arkansas wanted to play. And again, you just didn't see Green get out of the pocket and make big time plays. That's the difference here. Next game here, Ohio State versus Northwestern at Wrigley Field. This is what we expected. We talked about how this was going to be a blowout, that this Ohio State team was just far more talented than Northwestern. But it was a fun watch for at least a quarter. Both teams start out with a 3-and-out, and it kind of looks like, hey, Northwestern's got a little bit of aggression here. They're going to come out. They're going to play good. They're playing in Wrigley. They got something to play for. That ended quickly. Ohio State, 21 points in the second quarter, dominated that. That was it. That was the game. You just saw Northwestern lost every bit of hope that they had a chance to compete here. You mentioned Will Howard was going to throw some home run balls. He let one fly. He let his boy Jeremiah Smith catch a 68-yarder. That's the kind of guy you want to throw the deep balls to. Jeremiah Smith, just an absolute dynamic weapon at the receiver position. And you see the running game was really great for Ohio State. Both backs, again, NFL guys, Judkins and Henderson, 15 for 76 and 11 for 74, respectively. These guys are great. There's really not a better rushing attack in the country. And then you look on the other side for Northwestern. Jack Loesch doesn't play a bad football game. 21 for 35, 201 yards. He doesn't have any touchdowns, but he doesn't make any mistakes. But again, they just didn't have enough firepower. They're just not good enough. They're just not a good enough football team. And defensively, they just don't get after Ohio State at all. Only 1 sack, only 2 TFLs. On the other side, you see Ohio State got after the quarterback, 4 sacks, 6 TFLs, and just utter domination by this Ohio State team. That's why they're ranked second. Dalton, if you think you want to add.
This game doesn't surprise me that much. I predicted Ohio State to blow them out. They did. Northwestern stayed in here a lot longer than I thought they would.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised at all. Ohio State's that only lost us to that great Oregon team, and I'm looking forward to seeing this team in the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch those two teams go against each other again because that's always what they've said this year is if that was on a neutral site, Ohio State would have took that one. We'll see what happens in that Big Ten championship game. If they can handle their business against Indiana coming up soon. Next game here, Missouri on the road against South Carolina, and South Carolina gets it done because of an offensive performance that we haven't seen this year from Lenora Sellers. He goes off. I mean, 21 completions for 353 yards, 5 touchdowns through the air, only makes the one mistake with the interception. But again, you cannot ask more out of this guy. This guy is known to be a dynamic rusher. He's known to be an okay passer, not in this game. The passing is what won them this game. He dominates through the air. Again, on the other side for Missouri, Brady Cook does play, but not healthy, can't move at all in the pocket, can't run. That's a thing that he's really used in his career to be such a good player, and that's just eliminated when he took that ankle injury. They have no Drew Pine in this game. Again, I think an injured Brady Cook is better than Drew Pine anyways. The reason this game is so close is because Nate Noel is surprised. He was not expected to play. I don't think a lot of people thought he was going to come in here and play. He goes 27 for 150 and a touchdown on the ground. They didn't have an answer for him. He was supposed to be on a snap count, but when you got a chance to upset a team like South Carolina in their place, you play Nate Noel through the injury, and he looked great all game. Just not enough. South Carolina does it with their defense. They do it with a dynamic passing attack from Lenora Sellers. And again, this is one of the best pass rushers in the country. They get after quarterbacks, and they get after a guy in Brady Cook that just can't move around a lot. And although they only had the 2 sacks, they forced him into making some errors and some mistakes here and there. And again, that fumble was a big play as well because he lost yards on it. And it's just It's just enough from South Carolina, just enough on defense, and a really awesome performance from their guy in Lenore Sellers. Don't know if you have anything to add.
Outstanding game here from the Norris Steelers. He showed what he was capable of passing the ball. We've seen him run the ball all year. I mean, especially with their running attack being so good with Rocket Sanders and him in the backfield, that's another dominant running attack there. I think that he is a great player in the future, especially for next year. This guy's
Yeah.
just a freshman. Keep a note that. Even if they don't do out like crazy this year, which they've lost 3 games, their hopes for the playoffs are pretty much gone.
Yeah,
But
it's very slim.
I mean, this is hope for next year.
Yeah.
You return a great quarterback, especially if he keeps improving like he has.
Yeah, and on top of returning a quarterback in him, you return Dylan Stewart on defense, one of the best
Yeah.
freshmen in the entire country rushing the edge. That guy is a beast. He's only going to get better over the next 2 years. It'll be very fun to see what the South Carolina team can do and come out and watch this team play. This is a different program around Beamer. Next game here, Arizona State on the road at Kansas State. And this was not Cam Scadaboo having a ridiculous game here. This one was Sam Levitt. He performs at a very high level. Again, if he was healthy all year, we'll be talking about this Arizona State team in a completely different light. This team could be a top 15 team in the country. They have that one loss without him on the field. He goes 21 for 34, 275, 3 touchdowns. What more can you ask from the guy? Again, just great performance from him. You look at the rushing attack on the other side for Kansas State. DJ Giddens, 14 for 133, and he just doesn't get the ball anymore. Kansas State tried to do too much in this one. They played a different type of football than they're used to playing, and that's why they lost this one. I mean, Avery Johnson, 24 for 40. I don't like that at all. I don't like Avery Johnson throwing 40 passes. He's just not a super dynamic passer, and he's gotten a lot better this year, but it's just too much, in my opinion, especially when your run game is so good. He does have the 2 interceptions, and you could argue that's what lost him this football game. Just too many mistakes, too many errors to beat a really good Arizona State team that has Jordan Tyson going off in this one. 12 for 176, 2 touchdowns. Levitt, when he's there, he knows that's his guy. He goes to Jordan Tyson. He lets him just ball out. Let him be the guy. Let him be a superstar. He does it again. And Kansas State just didn't have an answer. They really didn't have an answer. Defensively, again, Arizona State doesn't get to Avery Johnson. He's a really hard guy to bring down. Again, one of the better rushing quarterbacks in the country. But Kansas State doesn't do a whole lot to get to Levitt either and kind of lets him sit back there and pick him apart. And that's why Arizona State got this big win, and they still have a chance in the conference. They have to hope for a Colorado loss and then play that BYU team in a championship game where who knows? If there's Arizona State team sneaks in the playoffs, they got guys like Scadaboo and Levitt that can really, give them a good chance against any team. Dalton, if you have anything you want to add.
Cam Scadaboo is one of my favorite running backs to watch in college football. He is just a truck, and they won this ball game without him going insane.
Yeah.
And that's impressive, and it's by itself. And it's because Sam Levitt played a really, really good game, and Kansas State tried to do too much. They have a running back that's going for almost 10 yards a carry on 14 carries. That is insane. Feed the guy the ball some more. I understand you're down 21 at halftime. It doesn't matter. I think you still can stick with the run game, especially when you're getting almost 10 yards a carry.
Yeah, and you talk about giving the guy the ball, let him make plays. He has a big breakout run. He has a 45-yard
Yeah.
long rush. If he could just got the ball a couple more times, even 6 more times, got to that 20 carry margin, who knows if they could have got back in this game? Who knows if they'd had a chance? I just think, like you said, like I said, just too fancy. You didn't need to throw 40 times with a quarterback who's such a dynamic rusher and with an offense that doesn't do that ever. Next game here, Boise State on the road against San Jose State. This San Jose State team is pretty solid. Boise made it look easy. They played really good offensive football here, 42 points on the board. And a lot of that comes from how good Maddox Matson played in this game, 22 for 30, 286, a touchdown, no mistakes. And a lot of that comes from how Ashton Jeanty plays. 32 carries, 159 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. He is the best running back in the country. He is the best player in the country, in my opinion. This guy is he's unbelievable. Each and every week you can expect him to come out and ball out. And a stat that I've been looking at that is just absolutely ridiculous. He's faced 22 nine-man boxes this year. Nobody faces a nine-man box. That does not happen in football, and that is a lot of the reason why Matson's able to do what he does. I mean, Jeanty just opens up so much for an offense. Again, of course, in those nine-man boxes, he's only averaging 2.7 yards per carry. But you look at the 8-man boxes where he's averaging over 7. You look at a 7-man box where he's averaging over 6. And you look at 6 or less, that man's averaging 9. If you do not run out a defense that has 7+ in the box, you're not stopping this football team. You will not stop them. Jeanty will run all over you. And man, are they very, very good when he is running like he's running in this game. On the other side for San Jose State, we talk about if Walker X played, expect a ridiculous passing line because he throws for 446 yards on 50 attempts. He throws 3 touchdowns, but he makes the mistakes. He's done this in every single start he's had. 2 interceptions, you just can't have it. And it's not enough, especially against this Boise State team that is so efficient on offense. The run game doesn't really get going. Floyd Chalk was okay, but Boise keyed in on him. He had been a pretty solid running back coming into this game. They were ready for that, and they just kind of let Eck make his mistakes through the air. You look at the receiving game. We talked about how if a quarterback throws for 400 yards, he's going to have some crazy receiving stats. Justin Lockhart, Nick Nash, ridiculous stat lines. 10 for 172 for Lockhart in a touchdown. Nick Nash goes 9 for 126. Again, this is the leading receiver in the country. Also a touchdown on the board for him. On the other side for Boise, you don't see Matt Lauder at the top of the board. He was their leading receiver for a while. Teams have keyed in on him. They have to key in on Genty, and that's opened up other guys like Cameron Camper, Latrell Caples. Great football games from them, and just an overall good football game from this Boise State team that looks to continue and hopefully make the playoffs later on down the road. Dalton, anything you want to add?
Genty is ridiculous. I don't know if there's a team in the country that can stop the guy. I never got to watch Barry Sanders grow like while like any time. I mean, I go back and see highlights.
Yeah.
If out of the highlights I've watched of Barry Sanders, this is the closest guy I've ever seen to him. It like we talk about ridiculous running backs. He's probably might be the best running back I've ever watched. And I watched Derrick Henry in person at Alabama, and that guy was insane too. But I think he's better than that Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And he just can't get stopped. You put 9 people in the box, he's still getting almost 303 yards a carry.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That is 9 people. That means that you could have, for instance, in most of their sets, they're having at least 3 receivers. One of those guys is open.
Yeah.
So I mean, that opens the entire game. That's why Boise State wins ball games because people have to key in so much on Genty. It leaves one receiver open, and Madsen makes an easy throw to an open receiver.
Yeah, and he's been doing that all year.
Yeah.
Again, this was a guy that was very underrated coming into the season. He's just done his job. Each and every week, he does what they ask of him. And we've mentioned it every single time you look at these stat lines. He's had one bad game, and they almost lost that one. Nevada got scary, but Genty was able to pull him through it. When he plays this level of football, you are 100% right. I don't know who can stop this offense. They are very good offensively. Again, they scored 34 points against the best team in the country. Next game here, we said that Oregon could have trouble on the road against this Wisconsin team that has a very good home field advantage and have looked much better since changing out their quarterback and running back. And they did. This team competed. Wisconsin did everything they could to try to get this win. It just wasn't enough. Oregon is too good offensively. And towards the end of the game, the defense for Oregon is what's won it for them. We talked about it at the beginning of the year that this Oregon team, they were in games with Idaho. And it was like scary because their offense is great, but their defense wasn't amazing. They've turned it around on defense. They've been able to figure things out. A lot of that stems from a stud who is Mateo Uiagalelei. Far, far better player than his brother down there at Florida State. He has some of the biggest plays in this game. I mean, he has a sack, a TFL, 7 total tackles, 6 of those being solo, and he has an interception that is literally the game-winning interception. He lines up at middle linebacker as an edge rusher, and he tips the ball up to himself and catches it and wins the game for him. It's just awesome to watch this guy play. He's only a sophomore. You talk about who's going to be in the NFL in the Uiagalelei family, it's Mateo. It ain't going to be DJ. And just awesome football from Mateo. Other than that, you talk about this rushing attack for Oregon. That's what won them this football game. Jordan James goes 25 for 121. Best game he's played this year. Very important in this game. When they needed something, they gave it to him, let him make a play. Gabriel, again, not his best game. 218 and an interception, no touchdowns. But just enough from that Oregon defense and that Oregon rushing attack. On the other side, you look at Wisconsin. Braden Locke, 12 for 28, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, only 96 yards. He just couldn't get it going in this one. And Tawee Walker did. 20 for 97, almost 5 yards per carry. He did his job, and Oregon really had a little bit of trouble stopping him, but they were able to control the rest of the game, and their defense was able to get them wins. Don't anything I want to add?
Yeah, I've got one thing to say. Mateo gets interceptions, DJ throws them.
Yeah.
And I talked about Jordan James all year. I said that he probably is the backbone of this team behind Dylan Gabriel. And when Dylan Gabriel struggles, you hand the ball off to him, and he makes plays. He is a very good running back, one of the best in the country. He just is so like overshadowed by Oregon's passing offense, and people are like, wow, they pass the ball so much. But look at the running game. He is the reason they win their close ball games. Him and their defense.
Yeah, and again, 25 for 121 is really great. Yeah. Again, the touchdown very important, and like you said, if you threw this guy on an offense that runs the ball a lot more, maybe he'd be 1,000, 1,100,
Yeah.
1,200 yard rusher. But he does it here, and he does his job, and he does it when they need him to do it. That's what's so important about him as a player. And just overall, Oregon needed to face some adversity. They face it in a win. That's the best way to get some adversity.
Yep.
Next game here, Kansas on the road against BYU. This Kansas team, again, uber talented. There is lots of talent. This team was expected to be very good. They've just struggled a lot this year. They haven't got the performances from the guys that they needed. And BYU, it sucks to lose a game where you look at these stats and you say, man, we look like we played better football. I mean, Daniels goes 12 for 19, 169, has no touchdowns and interception. Rhett Slaff beats him, 18 for 28, 192, a touchdown and interception. Then you look at the rushing game. Devin Neal, they didn't let him break off any big runs. I mean, only 8 total yards on his biggest run of the day, and then 52 total in the game. He did have the 2 touchdowns, one coming from the goal line, one from a little bit farther out, but again, only 8-yard carry is as long. On the other side for BYU, LJ Martin, Inkley Ropati, Keelan Marion, Sione Moa. They go to a lot of running backs. They go to a lot of different guys. They know that they have that because they've done it all year. They've been able to run the ball well. They do it again this game. And just really looking at the stats, you say, how did they lose? The play that lost them this game was a play that you just don't see in football ever. Jalen Daniels steps back. They throw two guys down on the outside, and they say run goes. They run goes down the sideline. Daniels decides he's going to punt the ball here, punts it, hits a BYU defender in the back, and they recover the ball inside the 5-yard line. BYU can't get on it, and the defender's just like, what happened? He thought he just broke up a pass. He had no idea what was going on. And wow, I mean, that is what loses you this game. It would have to suck to be a BYU fan right now because you were pushing, you were playing great football, best season you've had in a long time, and that's how you lose. You look back at it, you say you lost by 4 points, and they scored 7 because they punted with their quarterback and then ended up scoring from like the 3 or 4 yard line. It's truly unbelievable. And we'll see if BYU can bounce back. Of course, they still lead in the Big 12. They can still get to that championship game. They can still make the playoffs. But man, does it suck to lose like that. Dalton, if you think you want to add.
It's a bad game for it's a bad loss for BYU here. They were almost had a guaranteed playoff spot if they won
Yeah.
this game, like almost guaranteed. They it would have been. It's not obviously guaranteed. You can lose a game,
Yeah.
but the rest of their schedule isn't that hard. They have the Big 12 championship. I talked about it last week also. That Kansas has a unbelievable. They have a lot of talent on the roster, and I feel like that's what made them pull through in this. Even with Jalen Daniels not playing well, he finds a way to win a ball game. I mean, an untraditional way, but he won the ball game for him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that play is going to go down as just really
yeah,
one of the craziest plays we saw this year in this season. And it could end up being a play that costs BYU a playoff spot. Like you said, if they'd have went undefeated in the regular season and been 12-0, they lose their conference championship game and they're still ranked as a top 5, top 6 team, you probably don't take them out of the playoffs. You probably slide them down to the 11 or 12 spot and they make it. But yeah, I mean, this could be it. This could be why you lose out of going to the playoffs because you lost on a punt from a quarterback. A very interesting play. Don't know if we'll see that again this season. Next game here, Dalton, I know you're sad that you lost this one. It hurts a lot, and it ended up being more important than we even thought it would be. Tennessee's sitting right outside the playoffs right now, and it's going to be hard to find a way in because of all the teams ahead of them not having very tough schedules. It'll be weird to see if they can sneak back in there in one of these later on rankings and see if somebody changes their mind on how they see Tennessee as a team, or maybe one of these teams plays a really close game with a team they should beat. But Georgia just played the best football they've played this year. They looked really dominant. You didn't get the Nico that you wanted. Now, he didn't play bad football. He just didn't play superstar football. You needed just a little bit better performance. You did, however, get the Tennessee rushing attack. Dylan Sampson's awesome this game. 19 for 101, a long of 27, a touchdown on the ground. Again, you could just rely on that guy each and every week to be very consistent. And on the other side for Georgia, you got a little bit of a rushing attack from them, but the story is 100% Carson Beck. It's the best football he's played all year by far. He goes 25 for 40, 347, 2 touchdowns through the air, no interceptions. He has not had a game like that since the Bama game. And that game started his bad run. This was the game that might start him as being on a good run. I mean, it's just really unbelievable how good he played. He doesn't run, and he goes 3 for 32 on the ground with a 14-yard rushing touchdown, one of the biggest plays in the entire game because all the momentum flips when you see that guy break out and run for a big gain. You just don't expect it. Tennessee wasn't ready for it because nobody game plans for Carson Beck on the ground. Just the performance out of Georgia was just the best you've seen from them. They did everything right in this game, and one of the biggest plays in this entire game was Tennessee had an opportunity where they were up 7-0, getting a punt, and Boo Carter, he takes it down the sideline. He has one man to beat, and it's the punter. And Georgia's punter makes one of the best tackles I've seen a punter make ever. I mean, he makes a form tackle, brings him down, saves the touchdown. Tennessee has all this momentum that they just lose a little bit of because if they scored that one, they're up 14-0. Momentum's everything. And you know that, and I know that playing football. When you get momentum, you feel like you can win. That play it changed the game completely. Tennessee has to kick a field goal. They're up 10-0. And then Beck, he turns it on, goes all the way down the field, scores really, really quick. It's 10-7. The game changes. And you just look back at that and you say, wow, a punter where it just makes a crazy tackle, makes a great play on an athlete. You look at the receivers for Georgia. Of course, Oscar Delp. That's another guy that just really played the best game he's played all year. We expected this guy to be an elite tight end. He hadn't done it this year. He hadn't scored a touchdown. This game, he goes 4 for 56, 2 touchdowns. And of course, both of those coming from great throws from Carson Beck. It's just a tough one for Tennessee to lose. Dalton, if you anything you want to add to this one?
Yeah, Georgia is the best team in the country when they play like this
Yeah.
because Carson Beck is he's a great quarterback. He just hasn't shown it in this year, and he showed it in this game. This is his best game I think he's played all year. And I mean, we didn't play that bad of a game at Tennessee. I wasn't bad. It was just a fact of that Georgia was just the better football team in this game,
Yeah.
in my opinion, and it showed.
We'll see what Tennessee can do the rest of the year. They have to find a way to sneak in there. Of course, it's going to be tough now because, again, those teams in front of them will just have to drop a game and find some way to get them in there. It'll be interesting. And that's why I don't like these mega conferences. It's just too much when you can't play everybody in the conference. You don't have that head to head that can be the final decider when you talk about playoffs. And really, we'll see what happens. I mean, Georgia doesn't have much left. Ole Miss doesn't have much left. Bama, all they have to worry about is Oklahoma and Auburn. Again, both of those teams really underperforming this year. So Tennessee just needs a loss from one of those teams so they can get in that playoff race. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, another fun week with a lot of upsets and just really good college football. This season, again, has been so great. I don't know if we'll see a season like this again for another decade. We plan on again posting again on Thursday with our pick'ems for this upcoming week, which has a lot of very important games. And also, again, college basketball. We're about 3 weeks into it. Thanksgiving coming up soon. That's where a lot of the college basketball feast week happens. Get a lot of really fun tournaments and stuff like that. So I'd like to bring up a little bit of, talk about that a little bit before then, and then lead into that. That'll be a really fun week to talk about after it's over. Talk about all those big tournament winners, and of course the midseason tournaments that are super important in college basketball. Looking forward to the next couple of weeks of football. This is it. We're coming down to the final stretch. It's kind of sad to say that football's almost over, but there's still a ton left. The meat of the sandwich is still left. The best part is coming up, and it's going to be really exciting to see how it all plays out. Dalton, do you have anything you want to add?
Big few weeks of football coming, like you said. Tennessee, we've got to win these next. Oh, we're going to win this weekend. We play UTEP, but
Yeah,
that weekend after that, that's big weekend. It's also a big weekend for you, UVA.
yeah,
And that
yeah,
next
of
weekend,
course.
yeah,
I'm looking forward to that one because
yeah,
if anything, salvage your season by beating the crap out of UVA.
yes.
Salvage the season by doing that. If you can, at least you end on a high note. At least you end on a positive, and it's going to be a fun one. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff in Lane Stadium. It's going to be bumping. Doesn't matter. The fans always show up, no matter how good or bad the team is. And yeah, I'm excited for that one. Again, thank you guys so much for joining. Like and subscribe. Leave comments on how you'd like us to handle the college basketball segments as well as future videos. And peace, guys.
Peace.